Satan is not giving up here. He's not saying, you know what? I give up. I'm not going to try to tempt you anymore. Even after Jesus resisted all these temptations, Satan is saying, you know what? I'm waiting until there's another opportunity. I don't know, maybe Satan was thinking, you know what? When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, this is a great opportunity. Or during other times in Jesus's ministry, this is a great opportunity to try to tempt Jesus. So we see here that even after we've been faithful in resisting temptation and sexual immorality, Satan is not going to give up. He might wait a week later. He might wait a year later. He might wait 10 years later. And he's going to wait for that time of weakness. And we have to be on guard, and we have to recognize that he's not giving up, and we can't let our guard down.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. You're welcome to Ready for Marriage. And today we're going to be discussing sexual purity in love and dating. So the first episode we had, episode we have concerning this conversation was, we just had random conversation with our community members, and we had a lot of discussion and questions and answers. And for the second one, we invited a guest, and the guest talked about dealing with masturbation and avoiding sexual temptation. So that was the second topic we discussed on this topic, sexual purity in love and dating. And this is the third and final for this particular topic, sexual purity. And today we're going to be discussing building resilience. And our speaker today is Winston Bowen. I'm going to give you a breakdown of his biography so you can get to know him. So Winston Bowen was born in Jamaica, and he was raised in the suburbs of Philadelphia. He recently resides in Lexington Park, Maryland, with his wife. Winston became a Christian 8 years ago, and he works as a software engineer. In his free time, he likes to hold Bible studies and share the gospel with his neighbors. And this last one I just mentioned is something I've experienced, that when Winston was, with us in our congregation, he would normally hold a Bible study every week. So I can attest to that he loves to share, and have Bible studies, and that is awesome. So I welcome Winston to Winston. Thank you for joining us today, and let's see. Let me introduce this platform to you, Ready for Marriage Network. All right. So
sounds good.
Yeah. So Ready for Marriage Network is a marriage and personal development institution. So we're committed to building young men and women, singles, who are interested in building a happy life and a lifetime of fulfillment in marriage. Just like we study for, to become a doctor, we study to become software engineers, and we study to become a professionals in whatever roles we've chosen. So it's just thoughtful to prepare for marriage, because we have a guide, which is the Bible. But when it comes to real life situations, sometimes, we might need to, be aware and more aware before we get into it, so we can know what we're getting into. So Ready for Marriage is this institution that prepares people for them to know what they are getting into, so that when they get into it, they're ready for marriage. So we're on a mission to build a powerful platform that will build and empower young people to be very, very intentional about fulfilling God's purpose as they seek to enjoy marital bliss and fulfillment in marriage. So our vision is to build a strong network, like I mentioned earlier, and a strong network of exemplary people, right? Committed to building their home, because some of us complain that we don't have people to look forward to in the lost church, people to look forward to, and we can attest that, oh, this is a good home, a marriage that's, last over a lifetime, that they can look forward to and, learn from them. So we're hoping that in the nearest future, we're going to build exemplary people who are committed to building godly homes and glorify God as they seek fulfillment in marriage. So our values are examples, execution, excellence, and excitement. Those are very important to us. And we believe in building, we believe in the power of having the right core values, because those would, help us to have a strong marriage. Having the right core values would help us to build a very strong marriage. And these values define our expectations of how we perform our duties and attain results and build meaningful relationships. So, moving on. So these are personal lifestyle statements. We encourage you all to, take this personal lifestyle statement and make it yours, right? These are positive, statements that we can live by. So the first one is to make positive impact on everyone we meet, everywhere we go, and to be a solution provider, not a part of the problem to be solved. And number 3 is to be a role model worthy of emulation. Number 4 is to do the right thing at the right time, regardless of whoever is doing the wrong thing. Because in this world today, we see a lot of people that, they just divorce for no reason. So it's not about what people are doing, it's about what is right, So it's about doing the right thing at the right time. We have Bible as our guide, so we should follow it, not follow what people are doing outside there, right? So, and we should be our best in all we do, particularly the things we're naturally good at. And number 6 is to value time and make the best use of it. Number 7 is to care and show respect to all through our words and our actions. Number 8 is to consciously build great legacy, starting now, today, every day. And number 9 is to live a life of integrity and honor. And number 10 is to make our family, our nation, and our God proud. That's the ultimate goal. So you can join us on Facebook at Ready for Marriage Network, and Instagram at Ready for Marriage Network, on YouTube. If you search my name, you'll find all the programs we've had in the past. We just celebrated our second year of existence. So, and that will be it. And I will bring up Winston. Winston, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Join us on all platforms. So thank you for listening, and I'll bring on Winston, and so we can get started. We don't want to waste too much of your time. Up to you, Winston.
Okay, sounds good. If it's okay, I'd request that we'd all grab our Bibles. We'll primarily be looking in the Bible for our topic today and what we'll be talking about. And so we'll be primarily in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 4. And we'll be looking at Jesus' example in being faithful during temptations, to take some lessons about how we can learn and implement being faithful in sexual purity and dating, and even when you're married. Okay, so before we go to Luke chapter 4, we'll actually take a look at Matthew. Actually, Victoria, is it okay if we do like some we kind of go around and introduce ourselves? Is that okay, or
yeah, that's fine. We can introduce ourselves. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think I introduce myself. I think I can call on next in my screen is Catherine. Would you mind introducing yourself? I think I know you though.
Hello, my name is Catherine and I'm Winston's wife. I'm from New York, and like Victoria mentioned, we currently live in Maryland. And yeah, I'm excited for the study today.
Thank you for sharing, Catherine. So let me see. Pelumi, do you want to go next? Are you available? Yeah.
I'm still presenting my trip to Scotland. Probably when I arrive.
Okay. Okay, can you just give us your name and that'll be it? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Pelumi Owolabi. Yeah, that's my name.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay.
All right. So next will be Mojoin. Mojoin, are you up there? Can you just say hello and give us your name?
Hi everyone, my name is Mojoin Adegoye. I'm very happy to be here. I woke up from sleep, so that's why I look like this, but I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So good to see your face. Thanks for sharing. All right, so who wants to go next? Who's on our call? Ibukunlua, please, do you mind sharing?
Oh, good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Bukonluwa Oidara. It's good to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ibukun, for joining us today. So let's see who else is on the call. Debbie, do you want to say hi? Josephine, do you want to say hi? Hi, Josephine. Hi, Debbie.
Hello, good evening. My name is Idowu Josephine.
Okay, hi, Josephine.
I'm
Thank you.
glad to be here.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Debbie, do you want to say hi? Hi, Debbie. We'd like to hear your voice. Hi, Debbie. Okay. Hi, Sarah, are you there? We're trying to introduce ourselves before
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Debbie. Thank you for joining us today. And it's so good to hear your voice. All right, so let's move on to Sarah. Sarah, are you there? Hi, Sarah. Please say hello, hello. Hi, Sarah. All right, I think that's about pretty much everyone on the call. So yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you. Great to meet everyone. And so, if I'm not mistaken, Victoria mentioned that some of you guys are from Nigeria. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
I was curious because I recently signed up for a newsletter about sort of Christians in different areas of the world, and particularly Christians who are facing, persecution. And are any of you guys in northern Nigeria? Because I learned about Boko Haram. Is anybody familiar with the situation with that?
Yes. Mojoin, do you want to share?
Okay. I hope my background isn't noisy because they're watching TV. Hold on. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think it's better now, but years ago it was really bad where some Christians, we even knew some people from our congregation that, were attacked, and the Boko Haram or even the Chibok girl situation where they went to a school and then they kidnapped like a bunch of school students and then they took them hostage and all of that. And it was like a whole thing. So I have a friend who his girlfriend died in the hands of Boko Haram, even though he's not a member. But then we did have like a couple of members here and there that were victims. Some of them died or some of them came out of both situations. So it was actually really bad. It was something that, we were praying constantly. It was, was a big worry for us because it was horrible. Anybody going through that situation is just very terrible. So Yeah, I think it was really hard for Christians at that point because it was like, you have to deny your faith. They're like, a gun to your head, deny Christ. And so a typical realistic stories from me. My family and I, we lived in Jos, Plateau State, and we had to flee. Let me put it that way: flee to Abuja, where we are currently living, and it was because of the Jos crisis. So there are literally Muslims trying to colonize the entire state, and then they'll come to every Christian's door, and they would be banging, and they want you to say you're not, deny Christ, you're not a Christian, or they'll kill you. And they killed some of our brethren in our congregation and congregations around Jos, and it was really bad. We lost some family friends, and my parents were driving me to school, and I'm seeing like a burnt dead body, like the body's burnt, is black, and they just use leaves to cover it, and it's in front of my school gate. And my dad was like, he doesn't want his children growing up in such environments where this is considered normal, or they start to have nightmares because of these kind of things. And then he was like, nah, we're moving somewhere else. And that's how we came to Abuja ever since. So yeah, it has been pretty terrible for Christians in given the situation. So yeah, I think that's what I can say.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for sharing, Mojani. You can go ahead, Winston.
Yeah, I appreciate you providing that perspective. It breaks my heart to know that Christians are dealing with that and they're going through that. I'm thankful that there are Christians who are still seeking not to deny Christ, even in the midst of that. And I'm thankful for you and your family and for the church there. And I'm glad that you guys were able to flee for safety, and I'll continue praying. It's even more real to actually meet someone. I saw the newsletters, I saw the reading about the situation, but to hear from someone directly, it makes it even that much more real. So thank you for sharing. And so going to our topic today, just living life as a Christian. Can you imagine going through some of the hardships, the persecutions, and even being willing to stand up to people like that who are going to try to make you deny Christ? And after doing all that, after being willing to put your life on the line for the gospel, just throw it away because we don't want to live lives that are honoring God, that are pure. After being willing to lay down your life to Boko Haram or to other terrorists, but then throw away your salvation because you want to watch pornography or you want to sleep with people outside of marriage. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And so we'll look at the scriptures today to understand how God is calling us to live lives in purity, and understand how He is equipping us to be able to resist temptations. And so before we go to Luke chapter 4, I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 30. Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 30. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than your whole body go into hell. What is Jesus saying is at stake when we engage in sexual immorality? What is on the line? This is the question for the audience. What is Jesus in Matthew chapter 5 saying is at risk when we engage in sexual immorality?
That we risk that our whole body might be thrown into hell. higher.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jesus is saying that our souls are on the line, that our souls are on the line if we engage in sexual immorality. And maybe we read this passage all the time, but many times we don't really live lives that really recognize that this is true. Because as was mentioned in the mission statement for the marriage network, the goal for Christian is to live lives according to God's standards, according to the Bible, not according to what everybody else does. Because if you look around in society, everyone else, they may be engaging in pornography, they may engage in fornication, they may even be engaging in just lusting with their eyes and looking at people who are not their spouse in a sexual way, and therefore committing adultery according to Jesus. And so we see it around us all the time in movies and on the internet, on advertisements, and that we can become desensitized to it, where we don't recognize that the danger that we face when we don't seek to resist the temptation of sexual immorality. And so here Jesus clearly tells us what's at stake, that our lives are on the line, our souls are on the line. And what measures, this is a question for everyone in the audience, what measures is Jesus expecting us to take in order to not engage in sexual immorality? What things is he calling us to do in order to repent of the sin? Again, we're looking at Matthew chapter 5, 27 through 30. What measures is Jesus asking us to take in order to not engage in sexual immorality?
It says that if you have to lose one part of our body, then we might need to do that. If you have to lose an arm or an eye, we might need to do that just to make sure that we don't go to hell.
Precisely. And so Jesus is saying that we need to be willing to take extreme measures. Even if that means it comes at great sacrifice, even if that means that we lose a limb, even if that means we lose an eye. And those measures also include the steps that we'll take leading up to that. For instance, if you are engaging in watching internet pornography, what steps would Jesus call you to take in order to repent or come out of that sin? What steps would Jesus call you to take if you're watching pornography on your computer to come out of sexual immorality?
He would probably want you to get rid of your computer.
Yeah. Okay. Cut off access. But wait a minute. We live in the computer age where we need a computer just to be able to get on Facebook or to watch Netflix or to do most things in our lives. So if I get rid of my computer, that's going to be a huge inconvenience. Is Jesus going to say, you know what? I know that would be an inconvenience, so you don't have to do that. No, he's going to expect us to be willing to get rid of our computers if that's causing us to sin. Well, what if it even goes further? What if, I myself, I work as a software engineer. If I am watching pornography on my computer and Jesus is calling me to cut that off, and then I can't use a computer anymore. What does that mean? It means I have to find a new job. Maybe I work as someone in the grocery store, someone at the checkout counter, something where I don't need any type of computer to be able to do my job. Wait a minute, you may say, are you saying that you're telling me that I would need to uproot my career? I'm saying that's what Jesus is calling us to do, whatever it takes. Yes, Mo. Yes, Mo. Can I call you Mo?
Sure, you can call me Mo, thank you. I wanted to add to that maybe, I don't know, for me, like cutting it away completely, like saying, oh, you don't need the laptop anymore because you're using it to sing, so you have to like, give it away or throw it away or something. But I was thinking, I think I wrote some ways down. First of all, you acknowledge that you have a problem and it's fine. Acknowledge that it's a serious issue, it's a sin, it's wrong, but you're human, but it's fine. Then the next step is to be willing to seek, but then also be willing to accept help from others, because it's not a journey that we're going on our own. It's very fine to seek help from friends, from family, and tell people, don't be ashamed of it, because it can be quite shameful. Saying, oh, I'm going through this particular sin or this particular problem. Would you mind to assist me? So people that could, you have like an accountability partner. So people that can, that you allow to freely check on you, truthfully chastise you, and tell you, no, you can't do this. Even when you're trying to go back to the sin, they drag you out of it and say, no, 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 you have to do this, and always keeping you on check. And then I think the last thing I wrote is study groups and mentorships. I'm currently in a study group with my mentor, another sister in church, and it's been going great. We hold each other accountable, one another accountable, and it really helps us because every one of us is like fighting a particular sin, so be it pornography or whatever it is, right? But then you need help of other people to kind of always constantly encourage you to be a better Christian. So I think those are like some of the steps that I would have said to like use, not cutting away because
Amen. Really well said. Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree with you. Before maybe cutting off our arm and before gouging out our eye, maybe there's some steps that we can take beforehand to try to address the issue. And yeah, the things that you mentioned, I think are excellent. Those are all excellent things to be able to do in order to address this sin. And when it also comes down to it, after doing all those things, I've known people who they've gotten accountability partners, they've gotten mentors, they have, been willing to, study about it, do X and Y and Z, and they still aren't stopping. And so then we got to escalate things a little bit more. You got to be able to say, okay, that's not preventing you from actually stopping, then you really need to cut off the access. And like you mentioned, being willing to seek help and receive help. You can't be able to get help if you're not going to listen. If someone tells you like, hey, I've been working with you for a year, I've been praying for you, I've been, weeping and crying when you have fallen into this sin, I've been fasting and praying that God would strengthen you and help you to grow into the person of God that he wants you to be. And brother or sister, after working with you for this time, I sincerely believe you need to get rid of your computer, because nothing else is preventing you from, nothing else is going to stop you from doing the things that you're doing on that. And maybe it doesn't have to be forever. Maybe it's only for 2 years until you can get the clarity of mind that you need. But I sincerely believe that it's something you need to do. But then you say, oh, Winston, you're too extreme. You know what's extreme? Throwing away your soul because of the things that you're going to be watching on your computer. That's extreme. It's not extreme to follow what Jesus says in order so that we can save our souls in the end. Wonderful. Any other thoughts or comments about what Jesus's standard is and how serious he expects us to take purity in our lives? Wonderful. So we'll turn to our primary text today, which will be Luke chapter 4. Luke chapter 4. Okay, so we'll first look at Luke chapter 4. And may I have a volunteer, please, to read verses 1 through 3 of Luke chapter 4.
I'll take that. So Luke 4, verses 1 to 3. Jesus, full of Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit in the desert, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them he was hungry. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, tell this stone to become bread."
Wonderful, thank you. So Jesus is being tempted by the devil here. And we're going to look at how Jesus faces temptation and what it teaches us about facing temptation, and particularly what it teaches us about facing temptation of sexual immorality. So Jesus was being tempted by the devil here. And we're told that Jesus in Hebrews 2, chapter 2, verse 18, that Jesus was tempted, but he did not sin. And so one of the ways is that, that we can take away from that is that Jesus has given us instructions in how to endure temptation. And so here we see Satan come to Jesus and he tells him, if you're the Son of God, command this stone to become bread. And so the first thing I want to think about is, why is this even a temptation? Has Jesus ever miraculously created bread before?
Yes, I'll say the manna.
Yeah, so raining manna from heaven, I think that's one way. What's other ways that Jesus miraculously created food?
He turned the 5 loaves into 5 loaves of bread and fish.
Exactly. So he fed the 5,000 with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he also fed the 4,000 with the 7 loaves of bread. And so Jesus is going to miraculously create food. So it's not wrong for him to do that. So what is wrong? What is a temptation that Satan is trying to get Jesus to fall into here, if it's not wrong for him to miraculously create food?
Is it listening to the devil instead of God?
I think that has a lot to do with it, because Jesus is being led by the Holy Spirit to follow a certain course of action, which is fasting and praying. And we could see how this could be very important, because he's about to begin his ministry, his public ministry, call his disciples, begin preaching and teaching. And you could understand why it would be a very important time for him to take time in prayer and preparing for this, preparing for what God is going to call him to do. And so instead of following God's direction, he would be following Satan's direction. I think another component of this as well is that Jesus, in every instance, when he performed a miracle, did he ever perform a miracle on his own behalf? In every instance, he did it to serve someone else and to glorify God. And so this would have been the instance where Satan would have been like, you know what? You do use the power that God has given you to be able to serve yourself, to be able to selfishly seek to satisfy yourself. And so while he's being led to fast and pray and earnestly petitioning God, Satan is trying to get Jesus to selfishly seek to use his own power. But Jesus wasn't here to selfishly use his power to serve himself, but to serve others. Okay, so I think there's some parallels here when it comes to purity, whether you're dating or whether you are single or whether you are married. There's some parallels here to sexual immorality. One of the things to think about is, well, I guess I'll ask the questions. How can this relate to temptation of sexual immorality? How can this be at all related and at all relevant to that?
I'll say that if Jesus can be tempted and he didn't fall for that temptation, and if we're called as children, and so we have that power to resist the temptation.
Wonderful. I think that's a great parallel. I see someone in the chat said, okay, they never looked at this passage that way. Yep, yeah, God's word is it's so beautiful. Think about this. Satan was trying to get Jesus to disobey God's will by appealing to his weakness. After fasting for 40 days, how did Jesus feel?
Weak and exhausted.
Yeah, and he was hungry, right?
Yes.
And so Satan says, okay, I want you to follow me. How about I try to get you to do that by presenting something that you feel like you desperately need? Can that be like sexual immorality sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Where we feel like, God, this is something I know is good. I know is beautiful. I feel like it is something that I have been abstaining for and have been starving for. And I just, eagerly feel like I desire this. Do you think Satan doesn't know that? And that he isn't going to try to use your weaknesses in order to try to get you to sin? I think he's well aware. And so we have to realize that Satan isn't playing by the rules. He is going to try to exploit your vulnerabilities. Let's say you are a single young person, or you're a person in a relationship with dating someone, or even in a marriage. There can be times where it's not if in a marriage, there's times where it's not, possible for you to be intimate with your spouse if it's they're sick or a pregnancy or things like that. But if you're dating, it's certainly not the time for you to have that type of relationship with your spouse. And if you're single, the same thing. And so Satan is aware of that, and he's going to try to prey on that weakness. And that's something that we need to be aware of. That's something that we need to be on guard for. To realize that Satan is not going to play by the rules. He's not going to take it easy on us, even though we are in a vulnerable situation. And so we need to recognize that and be aware of that first and foremost. And additionally, we mentioned earlier that Jesus would have been selfishly using his power to be able to satisfy himself. In many ways, that's what we do when we engage in sexual immorality. We use the blessings or the resources that God has given us. I use my money, I use my relationship, I use my health or my physical well-being to gratify myself. And that's something that Satan is seeking for us to do, to selfishly seek to serve ourselves instead of following God's will for us in our lives. Any thoughts or questions or comments about that up to verse 3?
Please, if you have any question, you can put it in the comment section. We're going to take a look at it. If you have any question, you can do that. And yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Okay. All right, so then how does Jesus ultimately resist this temptation? So we'll look at his response in verse 4, and I'll read that for us. And Jesus answered in Luke chapter 4, verse 4, and Jesus answered him, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone." And so Jesus' response further reinforces the things that we were considering and thinking about. Jesus refers back to a time where he's quoting here Deuteronomy 8, chapter 8, verse 3. But in Deuteronomy 8, chapter 8, verse 3 is referring to when the Israelites were being fed by God in the wilderness when they were hungry. Do we recall how God fed the Israelites in the wilderness when they were hungry? Does anyone remember that? How did God feed the Israelites in the wilderness?
He gave them manna to eat.
Exactly. He gave them manna to eat. And so in Exodus 16 verses 4 and 5, I'll just read that for us. Exodus 16 verses 4 and 5. Then the Lord says to Moses, behold, I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. And so God fed the people with manna by raining it down every day. What's interesting is that this isn't the only way that God could have fed the people. He could have, he could have rained down manna for an entire year, for 10 years. Why do you think that God provided the manna for them every day? Why didn't God give them a week's portion, a month's portion, a year's portion? Why did he, give them a daily portion?
Maybe so they can keep relying on God daily.
I think so. Isn't it much more comfortable when we have, a year's worth of money in our bank account, 10 years worth of money in our bank account? But man, how we recognize we need God and we are reliant on God when we don't even have money for tomorrow? All we got is what we can be able to eat today. And that helps us to see that the power is not in ourselves, but the power is in the Lord. And so every day the people were to turn to God for their food, carefully following his instructions and depending on him. And they gathered just enough for that day. And they gathered just enough for that day. And they had no way to store it up, because if they even tried to store it up, it was going to dissolve and it would be completely spoiled anyway. And so they had to rely on God every day. And they also had to pay careful attention to what God was instructing them. God performed an additional miracle beyond just raining down the manna from heaven. He performed an additional miracle by, on the sixth day, completely changing the laws of this miracle. He gives them 2 days of food instead of 1. And he allows them to be able to have food on the 6th and the 7th day, so that they wouldn't have to violate the Sabbath. And so God was teaching the people obedience and reliance on him. And Jesus now is quoting this incident, this time when he responds to Satan during this temptation. Jesus is telling Satan that instead of relying on himself and instead of obeying Satan's word, Jesus is going to rely on God and obey the word of the Lord. Awesome. Any other thoughts through verse 4 as we looked at this first temptation that Jesus faced from Satan, and how this applies to specific temptation of sexual immorality? We'll look at the second temptation here, verses 5 through 7. Would someone be up for reading Luke chapter 4, verses 5 through 7 for us?
Okay. 5 says, then the devil, taking him up upon the mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. 6, and the devil said to him, all this authority I will give you, and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I will give it to whomever I wish. 7, therefore, if you will worship before me, all will be yours.
Thank you so much. So How is Satan tempting Jesus in this section?
I think in my small understanding, I feel like it's trying to appeal to the lust of the eyes. I think something like putting things that look very, shimmery and very sparkly in front of you and saying, do you see this? Don't you like something like this? Don't you want something like this? Trying to appeal to that so we can kind of crave that.
I think that is very, very well said. Satan is offering to give Jesus, for a lack of a better term, a bunch of nice things, everything that the world has to offer. But there's just one catch. Jesus would need to worship Satan in order to receive it. So Satan is seeking to lure Jesus away from God by offering him the things of this earth. And I think likewise, Satan is seeking to do the same for us. Satan may tempt us by offering us nice things that the world has to offer, but there's just one caveat. As long as we don't hold fast to our commitment to following God, and we're willing to worship Satan in order to receive those things. And I think Satan uses this tactic against people today in trying to lure people away from God. And particularly in sexual immorality and impurity, I think Satan uses this tactic as well. How can Satan use this tactic to tempt us into sexual immorality? So how can Satan use the tactic of trying to offer us something that is glittery, something that seems nice, in order to lure us away from God and when it comes to sexual immorality? How can Satan use this tactic?
So it might look like in form of pleasure, the pleasure derived in the feelings, and pleasure that would be, derived from that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to use it. Yep, Segun, I see you say explicit movies, pornography. Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, those things are things that they use to try to catch your attention. And it can look really shiny, it can look very appealing. And Satan would love for you to want to try to grab onto that, and therefore depart from God. Absolutely, yes, blessing, exactly. The pleasure that we might receive by trying to engage in that short-term activity, even in the book of Hebrews, when Esau sold his birthright, that was compared to sexual immorality. For a simple meal, he gave away something that was so valuable. And so likewise, Satan will try to do the same for us with sexual immorality, give away something that's infinitely valuable for a moment's worth of pleasure. What's also interesting here is that Satan says, hey, look at all this stuff in the world that I could offer you. I'll give it to you. And all you got to do is worship me. But what's interesting, if we look at Ephesians chapter 1, verses 20 through 23, we see that God is going to give this to Jesus anyway. So I'll read Ephesians chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 20, that he worked in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him at the right hand in heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. And he put all things under his feet and gave him as the head over all things to the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all in all. And so there are many things that the Apostle Paul is, describing in Ephesians chapter 1. But one of the things I think is clear to us is that God is going to give all things and put all things in under Jesus's authority. Isn't that similar to what Satan is offering Jesus in this temptation? I think so. And yet, Satan is saying, hey, I'll give it to you. And what's the difference with how Jesus would receive it if he just follows Satan, and how Jesus would receive it if he follows God? What are going to be the differences by going one or either path? What does following God's path entail for him? What are the things that Jesus is going to face if he follows God's path in order to receive these blessings? Amen. Blessing, you mentioned that Satan's way comes with consequence and price. God's path wouldn't entail slavery to sin. One thing I think is interesting, is it going to be an easy route for Jesus to follow God's path to these blessings?
No.
What are some of the things that make that make it not easy? There's the suffering.
Yes, it requires sacrifice.
The sacrifice, carrying his cross, being crucified, being put to death. There is a lot of persecution, you have blessing. There are many challenges and hardships and trials that will come with following God's will. However, Satan is offering Jesus a shortcut. You don't got to go through the trials. You don't got to go through the cross. You don't have to go through being crucified. You can get all these things without having to face those hardships. So Satan is trying to offer Jesus a shortcut. How does Satan seek to do that with sexual immorality, temptation for sexual immorality?
So God said, wait till you're blessed by me in holy union. You have your husband, you have your wife, and then you can do whatever you want to do. And then the devil makes it, look very, interesting or very appealing, and says, no, you don't have to wait. No, you don't have to wait for that. You can do it right now with anybody, with everybody, it doesn't matter. So I think that's the way he kind of like brings it to us, that there's a blessing actually attached to marriage. There's a blessing actually attached to you waiting. But then when you cut it, somehow there's no way you're going to get that blessing, even if you get married and you're so like something like that.
Well said. Very well said. Yes, blessing. Lure you with the satisfaction and fun that comes with engagement without having to wait. Amen. Well said. And so we see that Satan is using the same tactics for us as well. He says, hey, you don't got to wait till marriage. There's this pretty woman on your computer screen that you can, fantasize about. You don't have to wait until marriage. You can go, be with that girl in the club or whatever. You can do all these different things. You don't have to do things God's way. You don't have to be committed to someone your entire life. You don't have to seek to sacrifice and to serve someone else instead of just seeking to serve yourself. You don't have to seek to take care of that person. You can just do things with no strings attached and get all the pleasure that you want. That's what Satan seeks to offer us. Well, we know that just like here, Satan really isn't going to be able to give Jesus all the things of this world. That's a false promise. And just like it's a false promise when Satan says, hey, you can take a shortcut to the blessings that are available in marriage. But even if you never are married, Do you think anybody's going to be in heaven and it's going to be like, wow, I really wish I could go back down to earth just so I could be married for a couple of years? No, I think they're going to be so satisfied with being with God in heaven that won't even be a question in their mind. And so even if we never become married, we can still look forward to the ultimate blessing that God is offering us to spend eternity with him in heaven. Yes, blessing. You're so right. Awesome. So you see the temptations that Satan is seeking to tempt Jesus with are the same type of temptations that Satan is seeking to tempt us with as well. And the same way that Jesus responds is teaching us the ways that we can respond as well, to be able to be faithful to God in the midst of temptation. Awesome. Any other questions or comments through verse 8?
No.
Awesome. So we'll look at verses 9 through 13. Would someone be up for reading verses 9 through 13 for us of Luke chapter 4?
Okay, then he brought him to Jerusalem, set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here." 10, for it is written, "He shall give his angels charge over you to keep you." 11, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone.
Thank you. And then I'll also read 12 and 13. And Jesus answered him, "It is said, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." And when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time. All right, so here, Satan introduces a new tactic. He introduces a new tactic. What tactic does Satan use to try to tempt Jesus here? I think someone mentioned something, but they were yes, blessing. I think that's a part of it as well.
Oh, I said
Ego.
pride of life.
Yes. Both I totally agree. He is trying to get Jesus to prove it. If you are who you say you are, if you're the Son of God, then prove it. Show us something. How can Satan use pride to try to tempt us in sexual immorality? I know for me, unfortunately, I used to think that my value as a man was measured by my ability to be able to be with another person, physically, to be able to pursue someone and feel as though I was successful, that I was charming enough, that they would accept my advances. And so Satan appealed to my pride. If you really are, as who you think you are, then you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't know about you all, but Satan can try to appeal to pride and say, "Oh, if you're really that attractive, then any woman should want to be with you, or any man would want to lay in bed with you. If you're really X, Y, or Z, then you should be able to do this and you should be able to do that." And I think Satan will present the same tactics that he presented with Jesus as well. There are many things in this passage, and for time, we won't delve into all of them, but I would just encourage you to read Psalm 91 and compare and contrast the attitude of the man in Psalm 91 to the person, or to how Satan is trying to get Jesus to behave. We'll see that it's a completely different approach that this man in Psalm 91 has versus the approach that Satan is seeking Jesus to have. And I think that will be very helpful for us to evaluate. But one of the things here to think about is that Satan says that Satan is trying to get Jesus to test God. And I think maybe an illustration of this is, if you're in elementary school and you tell a friend, I bet you can't reach in the cookie jar to hand me a cookie. And while he's in timeout, you're snacking on the cookie that he stole for you. Who's the boss in that scenario? The one who fooled the other kid to do what he wanted so that he could get the rewards. And that's what it looks like when we try to test God. When we are saying, you know what, God, if you are who you say you are, you'll do whatever I want you to do. If you are who you say you are, God, you'll drop $1 million in my bank account. If you are who you say you are, God, you'll help me to do X, Y, or Z. And we can try to do the same thing with God, but then we're the ones trying to boss God around by getting him to do the things that we want him to do. And that is forbidden. God, we should not put God to the test. We are not trying to manipulate God to do our bidding. We're his servants and we need to seek to serve him. Lastly, after Satan has employed all these different tactics that we talked about, starting from the beginning of chapter 4, when he was trying to tempt Jesus by exploiting his weaknesses, exploiting his hunger, into when he was trying to tempt Jesus by offering him the shiny things of this world, and even now when he's trying to tempt Jesus by appealing to his pride and getting Jesus to test God. Satan does all those things. And in verse 13, the Satan say, you know what? I give up, Jesus. I'm not going to tempt you anymore. Responds that she just give up on tempting Jesus after Jesus faithfully responds.
No, he tried 3 times.
And even after he tried the 3 times in verse 13, what is he going to try to do in the future?
Left him until another time.
Exactly. So Satan is not giving up here. He's not saying, you know what? I give up. I'm not going to try to tempt you anymore. Even after Jesus resisted all these temptations, Satan is saying, you know what? I'm waiting until there's another opportunity. I don't know, maybe Satan was thinking, you know what? When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, this is a great opportunity. Or during other times in Jesus's ministry, this is a great opportunity to try to tempt Jesus. So we see here that even after we've been faithful in resisting temptation and sexual immorality, Satan is not going to give up. He might wait a week later. He might wait a year later. He might wait 10 years later. And he's going to wait for that time of weakness. And we have to be on guard, and we have to recognize that he's not giving up, and we can't let our guard down. You know, I think about if we have to have the picture in our mind that we're like a soldier that is in the battlefield. We're a soldier in the battlefield, and we have to recognize that we need to always be at war with sin. And so we can't let our guard down. We have to realize that there are landmines, there are pit holes, there are snipers, that Satan is still lurking. He's still waiting for a potential weak time. He's relentless. He's not going to give up after rebuke the temptation, so we can't let our guard down. We can't become arrogant or complacent. We need to conduct ourselves, if we're a soldier, conducting a mission on enemy grounds. There are ambushes, there are snipers, there are landmines, and we need to rely on our general, the Lord, to guide us through, that we may be able to be victorious in this spiritual war that we're facing. Wonderful. And so bringing that full circle, we see here some elementary and some basic lessons that Jesus is equipping us with in how we resist temptation. When we're single, when we're married, whatever circumstances that we're in, when we're facing the temptation of sexual immorality, Jesus is equipping us to be able to faithfully endure those things. And awesome. Any other thoughts or comments? That concludes what I plan to share today.
Thank you, Winston. Thank you for that wonderful study. And just like Mojoyin said earlier, I've never looked at that passage in such manner. And, that's another way to look at it. And, it's really mind blowing that we can use, the temptation, how Satan tempted Jesus and he overcame. We can use that as, as like an example. It applies to sexual temptation. So thank you for that. And I think Mojoy has a question. So if you have any question, please, this is the time to ask your questions. You can either use the emoji to raise your hand, or you can put your questions in the chat. So this is in the next 5 minutes, we're going to be answering questions. So Mojoy, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh my bad. It's not a question.
Okay.
Did I also go ahead? I should just wait till it's contribution time.
Okay, so let's do contribution and question at the same time. Right. So you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Very insightful. So I wanted to say, so recently I noticed myself watching movies, or certain type of movies. I generally like action movies, but then I watch different genres of music movies, and then um, maybe there's this relationship that this man and this woman have, and I start to see myself craving that sort of relationship, no matter even the kind really, it might not even be my style, it might not even be ideal, but I start to crave that kind of relationship or that kind of man, and then I see myself for a while daydreaming about that thing because I just watched that movie. And in my study group that we're doing the armor of God. So that's when we were talking about soldiers. It really, clicked. And you say there was a part that Patricia wrote, or Priscilla rather wrote in our study book, that as a Christian, sometimes your taste starts to change. In your taste in music, your taste in movies, your taste in friends, and just things, your activities, your types of parties. And it's not a bad thing. You should embrace that change, because it's really like, as a child of God, not of the world, but in the world, there's some certain things that I should just naturally not associate myself with. And when we're talking about the last temptation, it made me, write some things down that, the devil is saying, prove yourself, prove yourself. But let it be in a good way. Prove yourself as a Christian. Show him that, you're a child of God and you're not going to do all those things that he's asking you to do. But then when he's asking you to prove yourself, it's like in a bad way. So things like this. Let me just paint a few scenarios. Maybe he's daring you to watch a certain kind of movie and you feel like, oh, you have the strength to, those things don't affect you. That's why I said that thing about myself, that ordinarily I can just watch a movie and I'm not even paying so much attention to it. But then I find myself going back and thinking about all the things that I've watched, and stays in my mind. Then I'm like, okay, I have to do something about it. So sometimes it gets worse and certain, but I feel like, is it not just ordinary kissing that they're doing? All this kind of things don't naturally like affect me. It's not a big deal. Or he dares you to maybe stay in a lady's room. She's changing. Maybe she's your friend. You go to visit your friend. Or maybe she's even about to change or something, and then you're still in the room. You don't excuse yourself, and then she's right there. You're like, well, we're friends. It doesn't mean anything. I don't need to leave. Or it dares you to stay in a dark room, close bodied with, an opposite sex and things like that. You just feel like, well, it's not a big deal. I can handle myself. I can control myself. But the thing is that the devil plays mind games. He would not, he's not in that situation that he will just leave you. Later on, he will help you with your mind, and then you start to, crave it. You start to replay it, and now start craving different things. And then when giving the next opportunity, you won't just stop at sitting next to this person. You won't just stop at, being in the same, place with this person. So I like the way you put it. As much as possible, don't give him chance. Don't give him room, because he's always going to bring back different kind of temptations to try and drag us down. But if we also open up our arms and welcome him with a big hug, of course he's going to be very delighted, because it's perfect. Perfect. You've created the perfect room. You've created the perfect situation, and you've opened the door and you said, devil, come in. But if we keep guarding our hearts and guarding ourselves, there's this resistance, and then he's going to keep pushing, he's going to keep coming. But with the grace of God, you pray for strength and all of that, it gets better. We're able to fight it. So I just wanted to say that well, we shouldn't put ourselves in compromising situations and always say to ourselves that, well, yourself, you're stronger than this one doesn't do anything to you, because you don't know that's when the devil might strike and use those kind of things against us later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mujari. And that is more like a summary of, of everything we've said, this evening, that, Satan tries to play with our minds, it tries to tell us we're in control. It tries to tell us that, it won't harm, that you got this and you can, you can stand it and you can overcome it. But then you might not fall at that moment into the sin, but then just like you mentioned, Satan playing mind games, and just like Winston mentioned also, that is going to come back for another day. So it's better that we guard our hearts and our minds, and we're on guard, just like the soldier who is always on watch, right? So that whenever Satan advances with all these temptations, we can say, no, Satan, not today. Right? So yeah, thank you for that contribution. And Winston, do you have something you want to say?
No, I just was encouraged by by everything that everyone is saying.
Okay, thank you for that. So do we have any other question? Oh, okay. Any question, contribution at this time? All right, if there is none, so I'm just going to give us a kind of a summary before we end today's program. So we started by having Winston talk to us, and he used two passages of the Bible to explain how to build resilience to us. He used the book of Luke chapter 4 and Matthew chapter 5. So in the Luke chapter 4, he was, he made mention of the fact that we might need to take measures, measures against, Satan temptation. So that Luke chapter 4 was talking about, if your eyes cause you to sin, you should pluck it out. And that if, he made an example of your computer, that if you need to get rid of your computer, you might need to do it. God has called us to what he has called us to is serious. It's about our lives, our soul. So do you want to get rid of your computer, or you want to lose your soul? So you have to weigh your options, right? So and that's one of the lessons to be learned today. So and from Matthew chapter 5, we talked about how Satan tempted Jesus and how Jesus handled the temptation, how how Satan offered Jesus so many tempting situations of how Jesus could win the whole world, and if he could bow down. So Satan offered Jesus so many things that if we're not a spiritual being, it's easy to fall down for that, right? But Jesus knew who he was. He knew he was the child of God. He knew he had so much more if he obeys God, more than if he obeys, he listens to the devil. So he used that passage to let us know that no matter what the temptation is, if Jesus can, be able to overcome that temptation, so we can today. And I would like to point to some things he said, that Satan will try to exploit your weakness and vulnerability. He knows your weak areas, so he might want to use that. So you want to be very careful about that. And he also mentioned that God gave manna to the Israelites, and he gave them every day, because he wanted them to rely on him. So God is our source. So we should rely on God every day, and, ask God for strength to be able to help us to overcome whatever temptation that might come our way. And he also mentioned that the ultimate goal is heaven, right? That we should look at the ultimate prize, which is heaven. If we look at the ultimate goal, whatever we're faced in this world would be nothing. It might be a very difficult situation or challenges, But then when we look at the ultimate goal, we will, if we put our eyes on that, we will be able to, overcome it. And he also mentioned that Satan might want to appeal to your pride. He's very cunning. He might want to look at several ways that he would try to, capture you and, tempt you. So we should, be on guard. Like he said, we're a soldier. We should not let our guard down. We should rely on, Jesus, the general, to guide us through. We should, pray about it, and, we should know that Satan is going to come back, right? So don't believe that, okay, because you've been able to, overcome this particular temptation, you're done. Don't think you're done. He's going to look for other ways to come back. So we need to always be on guard. We need to always, we need to always, put that, measures on to know and to be able to identify and understand when, Satan might want to tempt us. So I hope you've been able to, learn one thing or the other. Let me look at the chat. I think I see some chats popping up. So Mojoy said, my favorite lines from today's session is, obey God. God isn't extreme. God's standards aren't impossible. Losing your soul is extreme. And Polumi said, the mind looks for ways to sin. That's why we've been told to guard our hearts with all diligence. Yeah, thank you for that wonderful contribution. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time and attention. And today we're going to draw the curtain on today's episode. And I hope you've been able to learn one or two things that will help you as we move forward. And I pray God will help you to put on that guard, right? And God will give you the strength and the fortitude to, be able to withstand those temptations. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful night and have a wonderful time in God's presence tomorrow. All right, thank you, everyone. Please, before we go, can you help me say a very big thank you to Winston and Catherine for joining us today, for spending their time with us. Please, can you please appreciate them in the comment section? Please, please, please. Let them know that we appreciate them for, spending their time with us this afternoon. Please help me give them a warm thank you. Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us this evening. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys. You guys blessed us more than we could have given. I'm very encouraged that you're doing this, and I'm very encouraged by all of you who are seeking to be faithful followers of the Lord wherever you are. And in whatever circumstances that you're facing. And I'll be praying for you guys, and I'm just so encouraged. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Winston. Thank you so much. So on this note, I wish you all a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful night rest. All right. Thank you for joining us, and take care. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Good night.